What if the stories we tell, the dreams we dream, and the love we seek are all echoes of something much older, much deeper within us? Imagine a quiet forest, ancient trees reaching for the sky, their roots tangled deep below the earth. This hidden network, unseen yet powerful, connects every living thing. It holds the memories of seasons past, of storms and sunlight, of growth and decay. In a way, our own minds are like that forest. On the surface, we see our daily thoughts, our to-do lists, the bright sunshine of our conscious mind. But beneath it all, there's something far grander, far more mysterious. For many years, thinkers tried to understand the human mind by looking at what was obvious, what could be measured and seen. Sigmund Freud, a brilliant doctor, saw our minds as a battleground of desires and hidden hurts from our childhood. He believed that if we could uncover these past wounds, we could heal. He was like a detective, shining a flashlight into the dark corners of our personal history. His ideas changed the world, showing us that there was indeed more to us than met the eye. He gave us a language to talk about our inner struggles, our hidden wishes. He showed us that even our slips of the tongue, our forgotten memories, held clues to our true feelings. It was a revolutionary idea, pulling back the curtain on the simple idea that we are always in control of our thoughts and actions. But then, another mind emerged, one that saw beyond the personal story, beyond the individual's past. This mind belonged to Carl Jung. He was once a close friend and student of Freud, working side by side to explore the mysteries of the human soul. They shared a common goal: to understand why we do what we do, why we feel what we feel. Yet, as they delved deeper, their paths began to split. Freud, the scientist, sought answers in the measurable, in the observable facts of a person's life. He looked for the clear cause and effect, much like a doctor studying a disease. Jung, however, began to feel that something was missing from this picture. He saw patterns in his patients' dreams and stories that couldn't be explained by their personal experiences alone. He noticed that people from different cultures, who had never met, would dream similar symbols: a wise old man, a fierce dragon, a hidden treasure. How could this be? It was as if there was a universal language, spoken not with words, but with images and feelings, living deep inside everyone. He began to wonder if there was a layer of the mind that was shared by all of humanity, a mind that carried the wisdom and experiences of our ancestors, stretching back to the very dawn of time. Imagine again our ancient forest. Freud was excellent at understanding the life of a single tree, its unique branches, its individual scars. But Jung began to look at the entire forest, at the invisible network of roots that connected every tree, at the ancient soil that nourished them all. He started to see that our individual stories, while important, were also part of a much grander, older narrative. He wasn't just interested in what happened to us, but how it connected to the vast tapestry of human experience. He was less concerned with the broken branch of a single tree and more fascinated by the life force that flowed through the entire grove, connecting past to present, individual to collective. This wasn't about dismissing Freud's work, it was about expanding it, adding another dimension. If Freud looked at the visible part of the iceberg, Jung began to explore the massive, unseen portion beneath the water's surface, the part that shaped the visible tip in profound ways. It was a shift from looking at the personal mind, which he called the personal unconscious, to a much vaster, deeper realm he named the collective unconscious. This was a radical idea, almost mystical in its scope, yet grounded in his careful observations of human behavior and dreams. Jung's journey wasn't just about psychology. It was also about spirit. He felt that humans needed more than just scientific explanations. They needed meaning, connection to something larger than themselves. He saw that people often suffered not just from personal traumas, but from a feeling of being disconnected from the ancient wellsprings of human wisdom. He believed that modern life, with its focus on logic and material things, had made us forget these deeper connections. He wanted to help people rediscover the spiritual dimension of their lives, not through dogma or strict rules, but through understanding the natural workings of their own souls. He wasn't trying to prove God existed with a microscope. Instead, he observed that the human soul naturally seeks meaning and connection, often expressing these needs through symbols and myths that have echoed across cultures for thousands of years. He saw that our modern struggles often mirrored ancient stories, that our personal dramas played out on a stage that was set long before we were born. This was the profound difference. Freud sought to explain the mind through the individual's past, while Jung sought to understand the individual through the mind's universal, ancient past. This exploration of the deeper within was not just an academic exercise for Jung. It was a quest to understand what makes us human, what gives our lives meaning, and how we can live more fully by listening to the whispers of our own souls. He believed that by understanding these ancient patterns, we could better navigate the challenges of our own lives, find purpose in our struggles, and build richer, more meaningful relationships. His work invites us to look beyond the surface, to dive into the rich, symbolic world that lives inside each of us, waiting to be discovered. It asks us to consider that perhaps the most profound truths about ourselves are not found in what we are taught, but in what we already know deep down. This journey into the deeper within truly began with Carl Jung, a man who saw the human mind not just as a machine to be fixed, but as a vast, sacred landscape waiting to be explored. While Freud, his former mentor, meticulously mapped the personal history of the individual, tracing the lines of trauma and desire back to childhood experiences, Jung ventured further. He looked beyond the unique story of each person and began to see threads connecting them all, ancient patterns woven into the very fabric of our being. It was a shift from science to spirit, from the measurable to the mysterious, yet always with a deep respect for both. Imagine two explorers setting out to understand a mighty river. Freud, with his precise instruments and scientific method, would carefully study the river's current, measure its depth, analyze the composition of its water. He would trace its path back to its exact source, documenting every bend and turn, every dam and bridge built upon it. His goal was to understand the river's mechanics, its physical reality, and how its journey affected the land around it. He was a master of the visible, the explainable, the concrete. His work was about understanding the forces that shaped our personal boats as they traveled down the river of life. Jung, however, was drawn to something else. He noticed that the river seemed to carry ancient stories in its flow. He saw that the myths of river gods and goddesses, the tales of journeys across its waters, and the symbolic power it held for different peoples were just as important as its physical properties. He felt the spiritual pull of the river, sensing that it was more than just water. It was a living entity, imbued with meaning and history that resonated deeply with the human soul. He was not just interested in the river's physical facts, but in its soul, its spirit, and the way it echoed in the hearts of those who lived by its banks. This difference in perspective became the great divide between Freud and Jung. Freud sought to ground psychology firmly in the realm of science, much like biology or physics. He wanted to understand the mind through observation, analysis, and the uncovering of repressed memories. He believed that by bringing these hidden pains to light, through careful talk and analysis, people could be freed from their suffering. His method was about dissecting, about breaking down the complex into smaller, understandable parts. He aimed to make the unconscious conscious, bringing light to the dark corners of personal history so that reason could prevail. Jung, while deeply trained in medicine and science, found himself drawn to the world of myth, religion, and ancient wisdom. He saw that many of his patients' deepest problems weren't just about their personal past, but about a loss of meaning, a disconnection from something bigger than themselves. He observed that dreams often contained symbols that weren't unique to the dreamer, but were found in the folklore and myths of cultures across the globe. A dragon appearing in a patient's dream in Switzerland might have the same symbolic meaning as a dragon in an ancient Chinese myth. How could this be, if the mind was only shaped by personal experience? This led Jung to propose the idea of the collective unconscious. While Freud focused on the personal unconscious, the forgotten memories and repressed desires unique to each individual, Jung believed there was a deeper layer. This collective unconscious, he argued, was shared by all of humanity. It was a kind of universal library of human experience, filled with inherited patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that he called archetypes. These archetypes weren't memories of specific events, but rather universal blueprints for understanding the world and our place in it. They were the recurring characters and themes in the grand story of humanity: the hero, the wise old man, the great mother, the shadow. Jung's approach wasn't about dismissing Freud's important discoveries, but about building upon them. He acknowledged the power of personal history and early experiences, but he argued that these personal stories were played out against the backdrop of a much larger, older drama. He saw that our individual lives were echoes of these ancient, universal patterns. When we fall in love, for example, it's not just a personal experience, it resonates with the archetype of the lover, a pattern of connection and longing that has existed in human hearts for millennia. When we face a great challenge, we tap into the archetype of the hero, drawing on a universal pattern of courage and transformation. This blending of psychology with myth and symbolism gave Jung's work a deeply spiritual quality. He wasn't afraid to talk about the soul, about meaning, and about the human need for connection to something transcendent. He believed that ignoring this spiritual dimension of human experience was to ignore a fundamental part of what it means to be alive. For Jung, healing wasn't just about resolving personal conflicts, it was about finding wholeness, about integrating all parts of ourselves, the conscious and unconscious, the personal and the collective, the scientific and the spiritual. He encouraged his patients, and indeed all of us, to pay attention to our dreams, to the myths and fairy tales that captivate us, to the symbols that appear in our art and culture. He saw these as messages from the collective unconscious, guiding us towards self-discovery and a deeper understanding of our place in the world. This approach felt mystical to some, a departure from the strict scientific rigor that Freud championed. Yet, for Jung, it was simply acknowledging the full spectrum of human experience, embracing the profound mysteries that lie just beneath the surface of our everyday lives. His method was not about stripping away the magic from the human experience, but rather about revealing the deep, inherent magic within it. He saw the psyche not as a problem to be solved, but as a dynamic, living system constantly striving for balance and growth. He was like a guide leading us into an ancient temple, showing us the symbols carved into its walls, explaining their timeless meanings, and inviting us to feel the sacred presence within. He offered a path for those who felt that pure science alone couldn't answer their deepest questions about life, death, love, and purpose. Jung's work, therefore, became a bridge between the tangible world of science and the intangible world of spirit. He didn't ask us to abandon reason, but to expand our understanding of it, to include the wisdom that resides in the oldest parts of our minds. He called us to engage with the myths that shape our cultures, to listen to the whispers of our dreams, and to recognize the universal patterns that connect us all, not just as individuals, but as members of the vast, ancient human family. It was an invitation to explore the deeper within, not as a dark, dangerous place, but as a rich, fertile ground for growth, meaning, and self-discovery. So, if Jung looked beyond the personal and into the universal, what exactly did he find there? His most powerful and perhaps most mystifying discovery was what he called the collective unconscious. Imagine for a moment that you are not just a single person, living your own unique life, but also a tiny ripple in an enormous, ancient ocean. This ocean is the collective unconscious, a vast, shared reservoir of human experience, memory, and potential that lies deep beneath our individual awareness. It's not something you learned in school, or from your parents, or even from your own life. It's something you were born with, inherited from all of humanity that came before you. Think of it as a hidden library, not of books you've read, but of stories etched into the very core of your being. This library doesn't contain the specific details of your grandma's life, or your neighbor's first kiss. Instead, it holds the blueprint for what a grandma means across cultures, the nurturing, wise elder. It contains the raw, universal experience of first love, the thrill, the fear, the intense connection. It's a place where the fundamental patterns of human existence are stored, ready to be activated in our lives. Jung's journey to this idea began with a question: why do people from entirely different parts of the world, who have never met and have no shared culture, tell similar stories? Why do they dream of similar symbols? A hero's journey, a wise old man, a fearsome monster, a beautiful maiden in distress. These figures appear again and again, in myths, fairy tales, and personal dreams, regardless of time or place. If the mind was purely a product of individual experience, how could this be? It was like finding the same unique fingerprint on artifacts from ancient Egypt, tribal Africa, and modern-day New York. The only answer, Jung reasoned, was that there must be a common source, a shared inheritance in the human mind. This shared library, the collective unconscious, is filled with what Jung called archetypes. We'll explore these more deeply soon, but for now, think of them as universal blueprints or patterns. They are not specific images, but rather tendencies to form certain images or ideas. For example, the mother archetype isn't a picture of your mother, but the universal pattern of nurturing, care, and creation that all mothers, in some form, embody. It's the deep-seated expectation and understanding of what a mother fundamentally represents, regardless of the specific woman who fills that role in your life. This concept can feel a bit mystical, even otherworldly, and that's precisely why it offers such a profound contrast to a purely scientific view of the mind. While science often seeks to break things down into smaller, measurable parts, Jung's collective unconscious invites us to see the vast, interconnected tapestry of human experience. It suggests that we are not isolated islands, but rather deeply rooted in a common ground, drawing from a shared wellspring of wisdom and experience. It implies that our individual struggles and triumphs are not entirely new, but echoes of countless struggles and triumphs that have come before. Consider how a baby, fresh into the world, instinctively recognizes a human face or reaches for comfort. They haven't been taught this, but there's an innate pattern, a program running in their deepest mind, guiding their responses. That's a tiny glimpse of the collective unconscious at work. It's the invisible scaffolding upon which our personal consciousness is built. It influences our instincts, our intuitions, our deepest longings, and even our fears. It's why certain stories resonate with us so powerfully, why certain symbols feel profound even if we don't logically understand why. This shared library is not static, it's alive and dynamic. It speaks to us through dreams, through art, through sudden insights, and through the symbols that populate our culture. When you watch a movie and feel a deep connection to the hero's struggle, or recognize the villain's shadow lurking within yourself, you are tapping into the collective unconscious. When you hear a myth from a faraway land and feel a strange sense of familiarity, it's because that myth is speaking to an ancient part of your soul that already knows the story. Jung believed that much of our psychological suffering comes from being disconnected from this deeper source. In our modern, rational world, we often try to explain everything logically, to push away anything that feels mysterious or illogical. But by doing so, we ignore the rich, symbolic language of the collective unconscious. It's like trying to understand a magnificent painting by only looking at the individual brushstrokes, without appreciating the overall image, the feeling, the story it tells. By understanding the collective unconscious, we gain a new perspective on our own lives. We begin to see that our personal struggles are not just our own, but often reflections of universal human challenges. Our personal journeys are not isolated events, but part of a timeless dance. It allows us to feel connected, not just to the people around us, but to all of humanity, past and present. It offers a sense of grounding, a feeling that we are part of something much larger and more meaningful. It's about recognizing that the seeds of wisdom, courage, love, and growth are not something we acquire entirely from scratch. They are already present within us, waiting to be watered and nurtured. The collective unconscious is the fertile ground from which these seeds sprout, shaping our fundamental ways of perceiving, feeling, and reacting. It is the deep well from which we draw our most profound inspirations and our most persistent challenges. To explore it is to explore the very essence of what it means to be human, to tap into a source of knowledge that transcends individual memory and experience, offering a pathway to deeper self-understanding and connection to the vast human story. So, we've begun to understand the collective unconscious as a kind of universal library within us, holding blueprints of human experience. But what does it mean that this library is not personal but universal? It means that the stories, images, and patterns stored within it don't belong to any one person. They are not memories of your specific childhood, or your unique traumas, or your individual triumphs. Instead, they are the distilled essence of human experience itself, passed down through generations, living within all of us. Imagine a grand tapestry woven over thousands of years. Each thread is a human life, unique and vibrant. Freud focused on the individual threads, examining their color, their texture, the knots and breaks within them. He saw how each thread contributed to a small section of the tapestry. Jung, however, stepped back. He saw that beneath the individual threads, there were recurring designs, ancient motifs that appeared again and again across the entire fabric, regardless of where or when it was woven. These deep, underlying patterns are what make the collective unconscious universal. It's like the basic structure of a human body. While each person looks different, has different hair color, and different scars, we all share the same fundamental skeletal structure, the same organs, the same DNA. The collective unconscious is the psychological equivalent of this shared biological blueprint. It's the inherited framework of our minds, the common ground from which all individual consciousness springs. It doesn't contain specific facts, like remembering a particular breakfast from last Tuesday. Instead, it holds the tendency to react in certain ways, to create certain symbols, to understand certain relationships. Let's think about it another way. Consider the fear of the dark. Is this something we are all taught personally? While a bad experience in the dark might make it worse, the primal fear often exists even without a specific memory. It's an ancient pattern, a deep-seated caution from a time when the darkness truly held unknown dangers. This universal fear, not tied to a specific incident in your life, is a whisper from the collective unconscious. It's an inherited emotional response, a survival mechanism etched into our shared psyche. This is the key difference. Personal unconscious contains what you have forgotten or pushed away. The collective unconscious contains what humanity never forgot, but instead, carries within its very essence. It holds ancient patterns and images that are pre-existent in the human soul, waiting to be activated by our life experiences. These aren't memories you can consciously retrieve, but they influence your perceptions, your feelings, and your reactions in profound ways. Think of the symbol of a circle. Across countless cultures, from ancient sun worship to modern mandalas, the circle represents wholeness, unity, and eternity. No one invented this meaning. It seems to emerge naturally from the human mind. The circle is an ancient image, a universal pattern within the collective unconscious, resonating with a deep human need for completion and connection. It's not personal to you, but its meaning feels universal because it taps into a shared wellspring of understanding. Another powerful. We've seen how the collective unconscious acts as a universal library, a shared blueprint of human experience. Now let's open one of its most fascinating books, The Archetypes. If the collective unconscious is the library itself, then archetypes are the main characters, the recurring plots, and the fundamental themes that make up its stories. They are not specific people or exact images, but rather universal patterns or molds that shape how we think, feel, and behave. They are like inherited programs or instincts of the human imagination, guiding our perceptions and responses. Imagine you're watching a movie, and you instantly recognize the hero. You know they will face challenges, overcome obstacles, and ultimately achieve a great feat. You recognize the wise old mentor, who offers guidance and wisdom. You see the shadowy villain, representing the darker side of human nature. These characters, in various forms, appear in stories across all cultures and times. They are not invented each time. They are drawn from the deep well of the collective unconscious. These are archetypes at play. Jung understood archetypes as universal, archaic patterns and images that derive from the collective unconscious and are the psychic counterpart of instinct. They are not concrete images or ideas, but rather tendencies to form such images or ideas. For example, the mother archetype isn't your own mother specifically, but the universal pattern of nurturing, fertility, and protective love that can be found in a biological mother, a grandmother, a teacher, or even a sacred earth goddess. It's the inherent human expectation and understanding of what motherhood fundamentally means. These archetypes show up in our dreams, in myths, in fairy tales, in art, and even in our daily lives. When you meet someone for the first time, and you instantly feel drawn to them, or wary of them, an archetype might be at work. It's not a logical assessment, but an intuitive recognition of a familiar pattern. When a young person feels an irresistible urge to leave home and seek their fortune, they are often unconsciously enacting the hero's journey archetype. Let's explore a few key archetypes to understand their power. The persona. This is the mask we wear for the world, the face we show to society. It's how we want to be seen, our social role. Think of a polite cashier, a serious student, or a funny friend. While these roles are personal, the need to present a certain image, to fit in, to play a part, is a universal human pattern, the persona archetype. It helps us navigate social situations, but sometimes we can get lost in our persona, forgetting who we truly are beneath the mask. The shadow. This is perhaps one of the most powerful and often misunderstood archetypes. The shadow holds everything we deny about ourselves, everything we deem bad or unacceptable. It's the dark side of our personality, our repressed desires, our anger, our jealousy, our selfishness. But it's also the source of great vitality, creativity, and untapped potential. When we see someone we intensely dislike, it's often because they embody a trait of our own unacknowledged shadow. Integrating the shadow isn't about becoming bad, but about acknowledging these parts of ourselves so they don't control us from the dark. Many myths feature heroes confronting a monster or a dark twin. This is often a symbolic encounter with their own shadow. The anima and animus. These archetypes represent the unconscious feminine side in men, anima, and the unconscious masculine side in women, animus. Jung believed that each person carries within them the psychological characteristics of the opposite sex. For a man, the anima might appear in dreams as a beautiful, mysterious woman, representing his emotional depths, his capacity for intuition, and his relational nature. For a woman, the animus might appear as a strong, assertive man, representing her logic, her courage, and her drive for achievement. Healthy psychological development involves integrating these inner opposites, bringing balance to our personality. When we project our anima or animus onto others, we might fall in love with someone who embodies our own unacknowledged inner qualities. The self, this is the central, unifying archetype, representing the totality of the personality, both conscious and unconscious. The self is the ultimate goal of psychological development, a process Jung called individuation. It's about becoming whole, integrating all the disparate parts of our psyche into a unified, unique individual. The self often appears in dreams as a circle, a mandala, a wise king or queen, or a divine child, symbolizing wholeness and completion. It's the inner compass, guiding us towards our true purpose and potential. These archetypes are not fixed entities but dynamic forces that express themselves through symbols and images. They are the unseen architects of our inner world, profoundly influencing our thoughts, dreams, and relationships. When we feel a sudden urge to protect someone, the great mother, or hero, archetype might be stirring within us. When we are drawn to stories of transformation and rebirth, the death and rebirth archetype is resonating. Understanding archetypes helps us make sense of the seemingly irrational aspects of human behavior. Why do we keep making the same mistakes? Why do certain people trigger such strong emotions in us? Often, it's because an archetype has been activated, influencing us from beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. By recognizing these universal patterns, we gain a deeper insight into our own motivations and the motivations of others. Moreover, engaging with archetypes through myths, art, and dreams can be a powerful path to self-discovery. It's a way of listening to the ancient wisdom that lives within us, allowing it to guide our journey towards wholeness. It's about realizing that our personal stories are not isolated. They are part of a grand, eternal narrative, played out through the timeless figures of the archetypes. So, the next time you encounter a compelling character in a book or movie, or find yourself deeply moved by a piece of art, or even notice a recurring theme in your dreams, consider that you might be witnessing the profound influence of an archetype. It's the collective unconscious speaking to you, revealing the deep, universal patterns that shape not just your individual life, but the very essence of what it means to be human. It's an invitation to recognize the ancient within the new, the timeless within the fleeting, and the universal within the personal. This is where the magic of Jung's insights truly lies, in recognizing that our minds are not blank slates, but rather canvases already imprinted with the oldest stories, the deepest wisdom, and the most profound patterns of humanity. Our task, then, is not to erase these patterns, but to understand them, to integrate them, and to allow them to enrich the masterpiece of our own unique lives.